We want this to be an easy service for you to be able to utilize to bring these students in. So the GTI has a way that we get them into SIS and help them with connecting to those student services. We do an orientation with them at the beginning to help them understand what's available in the community and on campus. We don't do airport pickup and provide housing, but we're happy to also point them in directions for those things as well. And then if problems come up during the time, my door is always open, or my staff, for them to be able to come in and talk about that, and we'll try to help resolve those problems as best we can. So that's the quick overview of the student intern option. So are there any other questions before we move to the J-1 Research Scholar? Yeah.
Are they not allowed to take classes, or if they wanted to take a class, does that impact the process at all?
Good question. So officially, let me let Michael address that question from a regulatory standpoint.
I think there will be an official policy soon that you will not like. Sorry. Historically, a lot of our GTNs and our J-1 scholars have been allowed to sit in classes, kind of unofficial audit, nothing formal, and as long as the course instructor gives them permission. Now, if it's the PI, of course, you're going to get your own person permission, but it would be polite, I guess, to talk with the instructor of the course to see if it's okay, if there's a seat available. There are some folks on campus who are of the very strong conviction that if you sit in a class, you need to pay for it, whether you get credit for it or not. So I don't know what the future will hold, but right now there is no prohibition as long as the instructor or the department doesn't have any policies against it.
So it is an ongoing discussion, and at some point a decision may be made. So yeah.
A self-funded student, the J-1 Research Scholar has to, I can't remember, like $25,000 for personal support. Is there a threshold for the student intern? Yeah,
good question. It's a little bit lower for the student intern because it's a little more short-term in a lot of cases. So it's $1,250 a month is what has to be demonstrated. I believe it's $2,500 a month for a J-1 scholar? $1,500, all right, so slightly higher. So the $1,250 a month they need to show and support can come from multiple sources. The visa allows it to be all self-funded, and I'd say about half of them are self-funded, and the other half are either funded from some scholarship from their home university or some entity, private entity or government entity, or probably about a third of them are funded by an NC State faculty. And in some cases, there can be some scholarship money that can offset some of those things as well.
I just want to add one comment is that, okay, for the GTI student, they are allowed to take the courses if they are willing to pay the tuition. That's always the case. We have 3+X students. They run first year as the GTI. They pay their own tuition, so they take the classes as regular students.
Yeah, thanks for raising it. We actually do have some other programs that are aside from this that do allow them to take courses for credit, either full-time or part-time, do part-time classes and part-time research. That has not been, the one where you do half-time research, half-time classes, we don't publicize a whole lot because we haven't had a lot of interest in it. Usually students want to come either do research or do full-time classes. Both those programs are really growing. There is a third option in there for 2 classes and then 20 hours a week of research, or 1 whole semester of classes and then 1 whole semester of research. So that is available.
If you employ them for 40 hours, would you limit the number of classes they are allowed to take? Or?
Yes, their primary reason for coming
Right.
here is to do research.
Right.
So
where would that limit be? 1, 2 classes? I'm just wondering.
Yeah. I think that's something. One thing, if they're taking classes for credit, then their research hours are strictly limited to 20 hours a week. If they're taking like 2 classes for credit and then doing research, that's a limit of 20 hours. That's a slightly different program than the one we have listed here. That's if they want to take for credit, though. If they want to audit, sit in a class, Right now, that's permissible, especially if it's a seminar course maybe that you're offering. You don't mind them sitting in on that. I would not recommend them doing more than that if they're, because they've come to do research, and so
Right.
to really focus on the research.
But would you allow like one class, like any other state employee, or?
A class for credit?
Yeah, if they just wanted to take the class.
Yeah. Visa-wise.
Yeah, there's no hard and fast policy. There needs to be a primary activity. So those who do research are coming in. I know some of our J-1 research scholars, a few have taken a class, and typically no one's going to say anything about one class.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone's ever taken 2 classes for credit.
Yeah, that's.
There's no prohibition
Okay.
for either to take a course for credit as an NES student.
Someone over here, I thought had another question. Okay, good. Well, let me turn it over to Thomas, and we can come back and talk about that some more later.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Really fast again for those who had come in late, and I know some are leaving a little bit early. I did want to recognize Dr. Fong and Dr. Lindsay. Is he in? Dr. Lindsay, nice to meet you. Haven't met yet. And he works with Ann Norcross as well, and Orlando Rojas, and Sam Hudson, and Tom Sinclair. They were invited explicitly, so if they're from CALS, Textiles, Engineering, Natural Resources, and PAMS. So if you are a faculty member and are looking for a colleague who is expert, and I dare use the word expert, at least familiar, these are some of our most regular users of these options for bringing in people from overseas. So we're glad that you've come to share some of your experience and knowledge. The other thing I want to point out is this presentation, along with other past presentations, is available on our website, please. We do have anytime we do a presentation, we post it for your reference later on. So it's available to you afterwards. So if there's a link or some verbiage that you're not catching on the PowerPoint, you can refer to it and use it later on. And that's under training materials. And on top of that, we will spend a couple of minutes navigating around the website. But if you haven't looked at our webpage recently, it's worth spending even a few minutes navigating around. We have a portal page especially for faculty and staff where basically there's a splash page that's a great starting point. And from there, it'll basically branch out. And it's quite intuitive. And especially, I think, part of the challenge isn't just the business and the logistics, or actually the process of getting them here. Because as faculty members, a lot of the times you have personnel reps and administrators who are dealing with some of the paperwork with you. But sometimes it's also, well, resources. What do I do with this human being once they're here? And so we're really trying to expand the resources that are available to you so that each time you have somebody coming in, you're not having to reinvent the wheel. And some of our more experienced PIs will definitely be able to share some of their own experience on that, on how to really be good hosts. David talked about the GTI program and the options that are there. And that is really set up, and I think what the Department of State is really trying to do is use the student intern categories for anybody who is a student overseas. That's really the intent. Now, there's a little bit of wiggle room in the middle ground there for like a graduate student who's a PhD student, and especially if they've finished all their coursework and they're just coming explicitly for research. When they're in that gray area, that line there is actually an option for them to choose between the GTI program or the Research Scholar program, which is sponsored by OIS, which basically is intended for fully trained professionals who already hold their terminal degrees, but it's not regulatorily prohibited to have an advanced graduate student come in as well. So there is a bit of a choice in that situation.